All right, hello everyone. So this is not my first time making prints. I actually took a film class, and I was at a previous university before I came to ASU, and took a film class and started developing in the darkroom. So that's kind of where I got my start in photography. So that's kind of I started off with prints, but I don't regularly make them anymore. I think with digital, it's just kind of it's easy to forget about printing work. And I don't really feel like I've really made anything worth printing necessarily that I've wanted to have like a tangible copy of. So it's kind of been my experience with prints. But I definitely think after doing this project, I'd like to do more of it just because having that physical copy and that tangible like piece of work is sometimes helps you see things a little bit better. Kind of noticed through this. Um, but basically, how did I do this? I decided to focus kind of on movement and body positions and like musculature and that type of thing. I actually have a background in exercise sports science, so um, that's just something I was like, oh, that might not be a bad idea to explore through this and like the science behind things. So that's kind of my idea for this project. Um, I went through Walgreens, and surprisingly, the photo quality wasn't bad. It's not great. As you can see, some of these images are kind of like these darker ones, especially. I mean, they weren't great in Lightroom as it is, or in Photoshop as it is. Um, so I feel like they're a little grainy. The light was pretty bad in the studio that we were in. Um, but I think overall the print quality, they've been pretty cool. Like I'm surprised about the quality. Um, and then a couple challenges. I think for me it was hard to conceptualize an idea for this. I felt pretty. I don't know. I just feel like I've seen a lot of these artists' work, and then I just feel discouraged because I'm like, wow, their ideas and their I like some conceptual ideas are so phenomenal. And I'm like, well, nothing really I feel like compares. Like how do I like bring myself to that next level and that next like artistic thinking? So that was kind of something I struggle with. I think these kind of look commercial too, which is another thing that I struggle with is like how do I separate myself from these like I guess Instagram photographers that you see and like everything on social media and comparing yourself to people. So that was something that I kind of struggled with a little bit, but I think of pushing myself. I actually deleted my social media so I don't see that stuff and I'm not as enveloped in it, I guess. So I'm trying to push myself a little further in my artistic endeavors just to try to create something that's kind of new and I've never like taking ideas from others but creating it into my own work, I guess. Um, but yeah, I definitely discovered that I think I I feel like my ideas pop up with as I'm after I'm done with the project. Then I'm like, oh, it would have been really cool if I did this. Like I'm thinking like in some of these shots, like things like this, where I'm focusing more so on like not like a whole body shot, but kind of like parts like the arm. You can see like the striations and whatnot, and like here they've got like the hands, just the hands in this photo. So I'm like, well, it would have been cool if I could have done something like with a completely black backdrop and maybe just like focused on certain body parts in there and did something more creative or artistic in that sense instead of doing some of these images. But I don't know. I think overall I liked them. I think some of them are kind of neat. I think this one's actually probably one of my favorites. I think I cut off his arm here, so that was kind of an oops, something I didn't realize as I was shooting. But I think I like the contrast in this photo and like the highlights in his face, and not his whole face is in the light. So I thought that was kind of nice, and like through the arm here and like the hands, I think the highlights are nice there, and the light just kind of like casting on one side of his body. And this bar here is kind of, I mean, it cut off the arm, so that kind of sucks, but that was silly. But I kind of like the arm. It adds a different, or I'm sorry, the bar here adds like a different dimension to the photo. Or I would say probably this one. This one looks nicer on the screen. Let me pull it up here. I'll compare it. Than it does on like physical form. So this is physical form. Get the brightness adjusted. And then here it is on my screen. My screen isn't RGB color adjusted either, so it's not true color, but prop it up here. The light's a little off, but so I don't know, I think it's a little different, I think, and it's hard to tell too. I have a really old iPhone, so it's not the greatest video quality, but I think I like this one actually better digital than I do in the printed form. But I think what I kind of like about this photo is, again, I've got this extra element here, just kind of as a foreground element, kind of hiding, I guess, like some of this busyness in the back. It's not my favorite, but it kind of sets like the story, like where we're at and where we're in some, I guess like a gym studio. But yeah, and I think I like too, you can see a lot of detail in his face and his arm, and just kind of like it shows a little bit of movement. So I think that's kind of why I liked this photo. And let's see here. Yeah, I think that I've answered all the questions, and let's go over some of the sequence. See if I can get my brightness to adjust. The one thing I don't like is that these are glossy photos. I had to choose basically either glossy for same day pickup or matte to be delivered, and I didn't really have the time. I did this on Tuesday, but it still would have taken a full week, and I didn't really have too much time to be able to wait that long, obviously, since it's due tonight. But so here's my first sequence. I'll try to make sure to get the glare out of these photos as best I can. But I think I chose this sequence. Kind of zoom out here and see if we can get like a better as a whole. I think I chose these photos for this sequence just because they are highlighting more of like certain body parts. So it's not like full body shots. They're kind of like, as you can see here, it's like the legs and the arm doing a movement. And then you've got the hands here. And then we're doing another movement with the kettlebell. And I just kind of highlighted it. I don't want to get necessarily at the face. This one I got his face, but I think like I could have shot it from behind or something. Like this one's not bad. Kind of depersonalizes it a little bit, but still shows a human form. So that's my first sequence. And then here is my next sequence. I kind of did similar thinking. These are more full body shots though. The one thing, this one, I don't like that it's landscape compared to everything else that's vertical. So I think if I were to remove one photo, I would definitely remove this one. That would be the one to go. So let's just even look at that. I think it looks a little nicer as having just all vertical. I think having just the one horizontal in there kind of throws things off. But yeah, this just shows more of like full body. I kind of chose similar lighting situations for these two. Obviously the ones at the end are a little bit darker, but I think that having them as like the ends isn't bad. And then we've got, go to this one up here. Decided, to be honest, as I'm thinking about this now, I think that they kind of show more of like exercise movements. I mean, this here shows like the chalk on his hands that he uses for like the bar, so he doesn't rip open his hands as he's lifting. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show like beginnings of things and like movements of things, and kind of focus more on like exercises themselves and like the beginnings of them. So got those barbell movements, and then we'll move to my next sequence. This one I actually included some vertical and horizontal photos. I think overall I'm not too keen on including multiple layouts, I guess, but I think this one works just because it's not just like you have like one odd one, like one vertical one. There's like a mixture of them, and there's 5 photos, so I think that works better. As of like, let's say I got rid of that one, that looks almost too neat and proper. So adding this one and kind of helped that. But I did some stuff just on the not the tightrope, but I'm can't think of the word for it right now, so we'll go with tightrope. So I just kind of focused on like the movements of balance, and kind of like wanted to get closer to see. He wasn't wearing shorts, so you can't really see the muscles in his legs necessarily, but just like the feet position too is interesting because there's a lot of like balance. There needs to be a lot of strength in your feet and have to have them spread out. So it's kind of why I chose these. Plus the lighting situations are pretty similar. So I think they kind of all work well together. There isn't like one dramatic like light. Like let's just say like I'd add this one in or something and it's like all of a sudden light. And just kind of just doesn't really fit in there. And then lastly, we have, add these in here. This last one, so we've got these 5 photos. And again, they're not all the same lighting situations. I would say for the most part, these are all pretty similar just because we were in the same location. But I think I chose these just to see like they're not the same movements. Besides the ones on the ends, obviously he's on the rope again, but I just think like kind of showed a variety of movements. And I think even though they're all a little different, they're not the same, I think they work well because it just kind of shows like the more of like the collection as like the movements as a whole and the project as a whole. That's kind of why I want to end on this one as well. Just kind of shows like a little bit of, and this isn't even necessarily even focused on him. It focuses even more just on like the element of the kettlebell. So, and like this one too is kind of just like a random photo I chose because of the exercise that he's doing with the golf. And yeah, I think they work well. I think like when you look at the aesthetic of them, and if you think about the project as a whole, I think they all kind of like tie in well together and kind of like this is how we like moved down through the movement. So that is my last and 5th sequence.